Hey, welcome back, folks, to Max Nafe Horsemanship. Well, I'm up in the room up above the arena where we can overlook the arena. And what's going on down there is, well, it's kind of got to do a bit with what I want to talk about in this video. And well, because I'm up in the warm-up room here, I'm not going to have horses in the background. And I can't bring a bunch into the arena because, as you can see, it's in use. There's lots of people in there. But this really does have a lot to do with what I want to talk about. And it's all based on questions that I got asked on a recent video. I got asked quite a few questions, very good questions. One I think I actually touched on recently. And there is another topic that I've never even talked about. So today we're going to talk about, well, we're going to answer all those questions. Coffee. Love coffee. But I also love horses. But a lot of you don't know whether or not you do yet because you don't have horses. That's kind of, this video is going to be directed primarily to people that do not own a horse. Haven't got one yet, and they're not sure yet whether or not they want to because they don't know if horses are the thing for them yet. They want to try it out and see. And well, this relates to some questions I was asked in a recent video, and the girl told me a story and then asked some questions, all excellent questions, great questions. And one of the questions was about leasing, and because she told me the story about a friend of hers that had leased a horse, and after the lease was up, she couldn't afford to do it again, but she thought it was a great experience, and she wanted to know what my opinion was on that. Well, my opinion is, it's great. I think it is an excellent thing, but use caution. I think if you don't know yet whether or not horses are the thing for you, and you want to try it out a bit and see what works, leasing is a very good, a very wise option because it gives you a chance to get hands-on and get dirty with the horse and experience horse stuff and find out, is that the life for you? Is that something that you really want to be doing? And so, again, like I said, excellent choice. Now, I'm going to throw in a bunch of things. I'm going to answer a whole bunch of stuff a whole bunch of questions she didn't ask. And it's basically about the lease itself. I don't know that much about leasing. I've never leased a horse. Well, I sort of kind of did. In fact, the very first horse I rode was sort of a lease situation. The horse belonged to somebody else, and I paid half the board and had the privilege of riding the horse anytime I wanted to. And they supplied the horse, all the tack, they paid for everything else. All I had to do was pay for half of the board for the horse. So it was actually a pretty good deal. Now, the deals will vary. And before we even talk about that part, let's back up to the horse itself. If you are considering leasing a horse, go meet the horse and have prepared a list of 100 questions, or well, whatever, a lot of questions, because you want to find out all about the horse, because not every person and every horse is a good combination. And there might be absolutely nothing wrong with the horse and absolutely nothing wrong with you, and yet the two of you just don't get along. You just don't click, and it happens even with people. Same thing. It doesn't mean that's a bad horse, but you want to get to know what the horse is. How old is it? How much experience has it got? Meet the thing, find out its personality, talk to the owner, and find out what its little quirks are, because I can guarantee every horse has got at least a couple little quirks. There's no perfect horses out there, none. So find out what you're getting into. What's that horse really like? And then once you've determined whether or not the horse is even right for you and you can get along with it, then you can start inquiring into the conditions of the lease, because I can't even guess at how much it can cost, because it's going to vary a lot depending on what they provide you with. And the conditions and terms of the lease can vary from one individual to another. There's no set, as far as I know anyhow, there's no set way of doing it. And when you lease a horse, you may be responsible for absolutely everything. On the other hand, maybe they are going to provide all of the vet care, vaccinations, trims, and in some cases they might even provide all the tack you need, which is excellent, because if you don't know yet whether or not it's the thing for you, you don't want to be out investing thousands of dollars in horse and tack if you're going to lose interest 6 months later. So if you can actually get a deal where they provide the tack, that's even better yet. If you have to buy your own, as I've said before, don't go out and get in a hurry and go out and buy new stuff. Wait for a deal on some used stuff, and you can probably get a much better deal. Because if you don't know yet for sure whether or not this is the thing for you, then you don't want to get too deep in it financially. Otherwise, you start getting this feeling in the back of your mind that, well, you're kind of obligated to continue on now, and well, that's how that works. So ask lots of questions, find out. And sometimes some people will say, hey, the horse has to stay on my property, but you can ride it anytime you want. In some leases, you can take the horse home with you. You may have to provide the tack, they might provide the tack. These are all the options, many of them, and like I say, who pays for what, and if it's at a boarding facility, then that might change things too. You may be responsible for part of the board and part of the, and then there's another variation is the part board or part lease, where you actually share a horse with somebody, which isn't always a bad deal either, depending on how much time the two of you have. You may never interfere with one another in the time you want to be out riding, and you can make arrangements as to who's going to ride when, that sort of thing, and that might be a lot cheaper too. Again, though, you still have to consult and ask questions. What are you responsible for? What portion of the trims and vaccinations, worming, the board, and so on? These are all questions you have to ask. But my bottom line, though, is I think leasing, if you can come up with a good arrangement that works for you, I think that is an excellent option to find out whether or not horses are the thing for you. And so, is leasing a good idea? I think it's an excellent idea. Absolutely. I suppose in a way I did for my beginner horse. My very first horse that I rode, that's, like I said, that's the one I paid half the board and they covered everything else, which amounted to nothing actually. But that's not the point. They supplied all the saddle and bridle and everything else. The horse, all I had to do was shell out half of the board every month, which at that time was not very much. And particularly with those facilities, there weren't much there for facilities, so the board wasn't very much. And I only had to pay half of it, and I got to go riding anytime I want, and I took advantage of that because they didn't spend much time with their horse, so the horse was mine for over a year. I could ride her as much as I wanted. It wasn't until they moved and took the horse with them that that deal went down the tubes. But in the meantime, it was a great first experience. It's an option. I learned whether or not it was the thing for me and whether or not I enjoyed it and whether or not I was any good at it. And so, is leasing an option? Absolutely. But like I said, there is no one kind of leasing. There's many variables, many variations as to whole lease, part lease, is it at a boarding facility? Is it a private facility? What facilities do they have? What trailers are around? Do they provide the tack? Ideally, that's the best scenario if it's your first time getting on a horse. You want an old been there, done it, dead broke horse and they provide the tack. That's your best option for a first horse to get on. You want one that it's like you get on and he's like, he doesn't care. You're there, oh well, yeah, okay. Oh, you want me to do something? Okay, fine, I'll do it. Something that's basically what a lot of people refer to as a push button horse. You just push a button, it does it. You just have to learn what the buttons are. And that's where if you have somebody that can help you along and give you a little bit of instruction on what to do, what not to do, great. That'll go a long way. And yeah, the lease is a great option. One of the other questions that she asked though was if you do buy a horse and your life gets busy and you can only make it out once a week, is that okay? Oh, heck yeah. Once a week is plenty. That's lots. That's not bad at all. In fact, if you only make it out once a month, that's fine. And this is where, if you're boarding, it actually is to an advantage, because boarding, there's always somebody there to look after the horse, make sure there's food and water, and keep an eye on it. And if there's any injuries, they can call a vet for you, all that stuff. So, they were a little concerned that, in a boarding facility, that you had to be there a certain amount. No, not really. Actually, in a boarding facility, that's the best option in some respects, because you don't have to be there at all. And in fact, there's one horse here right now that there have been a couple of different people out here, but the individual that actually pays the board on that horse, the guy that owns this facility has never seen them in 4 years. They've never met the person in 4 years. So, and the individual that actually sort of kind of owns the horse and used to ride it, I actually just saw him for the first time in 4 years a few days ago. But a lot of people, and this is a very human thing, is, we go, oh my gosh, I feel sorry for my poor horse. I'm not spending time with it. That horse is going to miss me. He's going to, you know what? The horse doesn't give a crap. The horse is probably happier without you. I know you don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. We want to feel needed and cared for and missed. But when it comes right down to it, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to horses, they don't give a crap. If they got food, water, and other horses and room to run around, that's the best life a horse can have. They don't need us. We actually cause problems in many cases, which is one of the things that I like to try and avoid, is minimize the amount of human interference in the horse's life, so that we don't create problems, because too much human can mean problems. So, this girl was concerned that, if I can't be out there often enough, is that a bad thing? No, as long as you pay your bill, nobody cares. And the horse doesn't care either, really, honest, they don't care. And especially if, and I mentioned this in another video, I talked about how tack aversion, or how the horse's mind works, is they see an image and they connect it to something that happens and a certain emotion. And if the only time you show up, you ride that horse, it might see you coming and actually not want to see you, because it means, oh crap, they're going to put me to work. And if I'm just hanging out in the pasture with my buddies, I don't have to do a darn thing except whatever I feel like doing. Okay, so if you're boarding, in particular, if you're boarding, if you show up as much as your life and time allows, that's good. The more the better. I mean, for building a relationship with your horse and for training and whatever else you're doing, the more the better. But if it comes down to it and life gets busy and you can't make it out more than once a week or even once a month, you know what? That's just fine. That's okay. And, a lot of people still believe that if the horse isn't ridden regularly for a couple of months, it has to have a tune-up. That's a scam as well. The horse has got an amazing memory. Does not, if it's been properly trained in the first place, doesn't forget a thing. I did an entire video on that topic. So don't think that the horse is going to deteriorate because you're not riding it often. Don't think the horse is going to miss you, or it's going to somehow mentally or emotionally suffer for lack of attention. No, they don't care. Like I said, if it's got other horses, food and water, that's the best life a horse can lead. They're happy. They don't need you. Sorry to say. And I find that a little, okay, I admit it, I find that a little bit of disturbing myself, is I kind of like to feel needed, and I'd like to think that my horses like to see me. And truth of the matter is, they could care less. But the more time I spend with them, though, the more they actually do like to see me, because just because of how I treat them when I'm with them, is a lot of times when I'm with them, I don't make them do anything. And on that note, though, I'm going to talk about something that somebody else mentioned in one of the comments, and they were talking about how boarding can be quite expensive. And although it can be, depending on the facilities. And this is where you got to shop around a bit to find out what is best and what you need. Personally, the extra money that it costs to have an indoor arena like this one here behind me, that I'm actually in it right now. We're kind of over top of it in an observation room. And this arena is a blessing. It's great, and it's worth the extra money I pay, because regardless of the climate outside, whether it's hot, cold, or bugs, or blizzard, or rain, or anything, I've got a sheltered area where I can get out of the wind and rain and sun and everything else, and it's contained space where we can bring in one horse at a time and work with it, and it's marvelous. It's great. I never thought I would actually like having an arena or working in one until I actually tried using one. A lot of people still frown upon them. They go, well, that's not like real riding. Real riding is you go out in the real world and ride on the trails. Well, there's some truth to that, but at the same time, I have to admit, though, I truly do enjoy having an arena, and in my opinion, it's worth the money for what I do. Not everybody's going to feel the need for one, and not everybody's going to want one. So shop around whether or not the facilities, because there's a lot of variations. This is, as far as a place that has an indoor arena, this is low end. There's really fancy schmancy places that cost twice as much, 3 times as much to board at, and they got all kinds of fancy facilities. This place has pretty much everything I need. I don't think there's anything here I actually need that isn't here. So that's the kind of stuff, if you're going to board, check it out. You don't have to go broke, though. You just have to get what you need. And if all you do is pasture board, you can get that for even less if you don't need the indoor arena. If you're all just boarding your horse outdoor, and your horse doesn't need a barn, it doesn't need to be indoor. I've talked about that in a recent video too. If there's any kind of shelter whatsoever and room for it to run around, that's what's best. Just let them go, let them run around. That's what horses do best. That's what they want. That's what they need. It keeps them healthy, gives them room to move, keeps them healthy, happy, mentally and physically healthy. Room to move, very important. And like I said, if you don't need the arena, boarding is not horribly expensive. And here is where I want to go with this whole thing about boarding, is the advantages of boarding is, like I said, somebody made the comment about how boarding can be quite expensive, but in fact, if you compare it to the mortgage payment on a piece of land that would be adequate to keep a horse on, or two, because you shouldn't have one alone, because they're herd animals, they like to be together, they're not happy if they're alone. And if you're going to own a horse, you should own 2 horses, or have a friend keep their horse with your horse, whatever, something like that. A horse shouldn't be alone. And what it's going to cost you to make sure you have a well that works, a automatic water bowl that works, and then you've got to make sure that you get hay delivered and arrange to put hay out all the time for the horses. It's a lot of commitment, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money to have your own place. In the grand scheme of things, boarding actually is a lot cheaper, because I could personally never afford nor justify the cost of an arena for my own use, and yet I really like using it. So having my own place versus boarding would be ridiculous. I couldn't afford this thing. I know how much this building cost, and there's no way I could afford it or justify it. An individual could never ever justify one of these things unless you're really, really, really rich. And I don't think there's very many people out there that could afford one for themselves. So that's one of the advantages of boarding. I can get a lot of facilities that are already here. I don't have to build them. I don't have to pay for them. There's approximately 70 acres of land out here. He just fenced off another 10 acres on the other side to make it even bigger yet. He's going to grow some hay crop or grass on or something, I don't know. And so there's going to be even more yet. And I don't have to pay for any of that. And it's fairly close to the city too. Property this close to the city is worth a lot of money. As long as I'm going to live, the amount that I'm going to pay in board wouldn't even begin to pay for the facilities that I would need to keep a horse. Like I said, you got your well, you got your water trough, you got your pumps and plumbing and all that stuff that must work A horse will die without water, okay? That's not an option. This is life and death. If you're going to have that horse, you've got to make sure that stuff works, which means you have a commitment and a responsibility. And if you happen to live alone and you go away for any length of time, there's nobody there to look after the stuff and make sure it works, to make sure the hay's put out, make sure the water's working, make sure the fences are up. When I'm boarding, I could take off anytime I want. And I don't have to worry. This, all that stuff's going to get looked after because my horses aren't even the only ones here. So that stuff has to be taken care of, not an option. So is leasing a good idea? Absolutely great idea. If you can make arrangements that are suitable and work for you and that you can afford, it's a great way to find out whether or not you want to have a horse rather than buying one that you're going to end up having for 20 years. Maybe a 6-month lease even might do the trick. That might be all it takes to find out whether or not this is a thing for you. And depending on how much time you got available to spend with the horses, don't worry about it. The horse doesn't miss you. They don't mind if you're not around all the time. It's not going to hurt them one little bit. And particularly if you're boarding, that's a great thing about boarding is that you don't have to be there every day. And boarding versus owning your own place and having facilities adequate for a horse, boarding, although it may seem expensive, it's a lot less than a mortgage payment, even if you got a couple of horses. So there you go. That's kind of a wrap on that topic today. And the beginning where you saw down in the arena a bunch of kids and people down there and a horse, well, that kind of goes along with what we're talking about because that was... there was a lady and a couple kids down there that they didn't have a horse and knew nothing about horses. And they were getting the opportunity through a relative of theirs to spend some time with a horse and get to learn a little bit about horses and decide whether or not they liked horses. So that fits right in. But not all of you have got that option. Not all of you have friends or relatives that own horses that can take you out and show you the ropes and let you experience the situation. Not always an option for some of you. So go right back to the lease thing. Is that a viable option as opposed to what you just saw at the beginning of this video? Yes, great option. And I think if you have any hesitation or question whatsoever as to whether or not this is going to be a viable thing for you, try it out. Go ahead, do it. Like I said, make sure you take along your list of 100 questions and ask lots, find out as much as you can about the horse and all the different conditions of the lease, and maybe negotiate a little bit and come up with something that works for you and the owner of the horse. Have a good day.